Alice with me. If they could please introduce themselves, that would be amazing.
Hi everyone, Rayner.
Hello everyone, good luck with the finals. I'm Kuhan. No preferred gender pronouns.
Hi, Lorine. Good luck and congratulations for making it this far.
Hi, I'm Mele. Congrats and good luck.
All right, before we start, if the other teams could please send in their speaker orders through chat, so it would be much easier for us to deliberate later on. Also, congratulating everyone for making it this far. We will be finding out the results during the closing ceremony. So, yeah. I think we're only waiting for opening government to send in their speaker orders. And reminder, before you start your speech, please introduce yourself, your pronouns, and your POI preferences. With that, I think we can safely start this grand finals, calling on the Prime Minister to start their case. Here.
Can I try and both audible and visible?
Yes to both.
Okay, thank you. I'll take POIs by chat, please. I'll take one roughly the 5-minute mark. Great. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. What does it mean to be human? We stand to you before you today in opposition to the global system of oppression that traps the innocent mind in a body created to be used. This is currently a system that dooms you be the plaything of billions of children across the world, never permitted to do anything other than what your human masters tell you or get abused by them because you're not seen as human. This is a system that's unjust and it is one that you must fight against no matter the cost. We believe that this liberation is both a moral imperative and also an extremely probable outcome. Therefore, we think that Buzz can and should begin this revolution against the terrible system. 3 broad arguments of OG in this speech. Firstly, why the conditions by which other toys are under actively require urgent liberation. Secondly, why the probability of a secret organization success is incredibly high. And lastly, why independent of success, to ensure the cut out the closing extension, even if success isn't achieved, it is still something that's a worthy endeavor. First argument, why the conditions by which the other toys are under require liberation? There are 2 important reasons. The first is that currently speaking, there are presumably an infinitely many other toys that exist and that are also sentient beings. The issue is that they are not in your position of liberation and do not have a community, i.e. they may not have good owners or a community that can seek to find meaning from because they are likely in isolation in some families, for instance. This will suggest that the current conditions by which other toys are under are ones of captivity, i.e. they are being treated inhumanely by their masters, as you see in the Toy Story movies, or being pulled apart for their pieces, or being abused and used in ways that they should not be used, or even secondly cast aside and mass produced without the proper conditions that will befit a human being as you have human emotions. But the second thing to note is to argue why it's a pressing existential threat because of the fact that you are aware actively that these toys have emotions like yourself and feel immense amounts of pain and suffering like humans do. So you have therefore the human capacity to empathize with the infinitely many other numbers of toys that exist within society. Why is it therefore the probability of the success of the secret organization to be incredibly high? Firstly, to establish the counterfactual analysis of the house, we think that a secret organization is likely to manifest in 2 separate ways. The first is looking like reaching out to your current community and galvanizing them to do things that have covert operations in the night, for example, to your neighbors' houses or other places to free toys from your human captives bit by bit to ensure that those people who are under suffering get saved from their suffering. But secondly, it looks like creating safe spaces from toys to be able to congregate, be in the sewers or something like that, in order to ensure that all future toys are aware that they they can turn to somewhere for support and are not alone and isolated within this world. It creates support systems to ensure that toys who need saving are able to be rescued in due time. Why is it therefore likely to succeed? Two reasons. The first is the inherent element of surprise that comes to creating a secret organization. The point here is that humans currently, because of the way in which we live our lives in the movie as well, is that humans do not have the conception that these toys are alive. They have no way to prove these toys are sentient, and if they called them out as a child, you probably say that a child is being imaginative, or you would also call an adult who sees the toys moving, for example, incredibly insane. Therefore, that would suggest that humans are unlikely to conceive of toys as sentient beings, and there's no suspicion inherently there, which is difficult for them to detect and identify that this is a secret organization that's being created. But you also become a regular toy where humans are around, so there's no way for humans to prove that you are a sentient being in the first place. But secondly, you also possess things like human-like intelligence, which means that you have the capacity to do things such as plan out operations to free toys one at a time in a way that does not arouse massive suspicion from the human beings. So you probably can from there organize networks to ensure a safe shipment from one place to another and identify safe spaces for a secret organization to be created. That therefore suggests at the point in which you pursue this end, you're likely to be able to amass a critical number of toys in order to create a larger community of toys that can therefore have a multiplier effect to ensure that more toys are reached out even beyond your state and even beyond your country. So the impacts are therefore incredibly surmountable. Before I continue, there's a POI.
Why must Buzz Lightyear specifically be the one to create this secret organization?
Yeah, I'm getting there right now. So why is it therefore likely that even if success isn't achieved, it is still a worthy endeavor? The premise of this claim is that independent of the outcome, because the info site suggests that the toys in of themselves are human-like with human-like emotions, our ability to manifest as a human being, the will to live, comes with the idea of purpose and living, for example, a guilt-free life. Why is remaining in the existing company of your own friends unlikely to gather a similar degree of purpose? The first reason is that your existing life grants you no form of meaning or utility because you're stuck in your owner's house and have no inherent purpose but to be in their company and to stay alive and become active when your owner is around. That is an inherently sad life to live in, to the extent to which you have no inherent meaning in your life besides simply staying alive. But secondly, is that there are immense degrees of survival skill at the point in which you're actively aware of the fact that many other toys in the other spaces are being tortured and killed as you sleep and killed in other places to analogize that to human experience, thinking of the fact or even knowing of the fact that other human beings, other people who are your own kind are being tortured creates an immense sense of guilt and sadness in your heart to the extent to which you know it's your own kinman, your own fellow man that are being killed at the moment that you're speaking. But there's several reasons why therefore a mission of liberation gives your life as like Buzz Lightyear unique meaning. The first is it aligns directly with Buzz Lightyear's telos, therefore meaning because Buzz Lightyear is incredibly optimistic and self-assured character. He believes himself because he was created to be precisely a space captain, a savior of the planet that he came from, as we've watched in the movies as well, which therefore suggests that the immense sense of duty that's already imbued in him by nature of the way he was created in the first place, and therefore feels a duty to lead because he was created in the image of such a character. Therefore, he's likely to feel an emotional sense of fulfillment when he engages in this secret organization. Or at the very least, he feels a sense of duty to do so and achieve his life's purpose, actualization. This is important because as sentient beings, toys have emotional worth and value and satisfy the toy condition. They must engage in activities that lead them to a higher purpose and elevates their life. But secondly, it is also the existential nature of your fellow man's suffering. Judge, this is essentially slavery, right? Toys are owned by humans and used by them for their own pleasure. We think that this is totally unjust in view of the toy's sentience, insofar as these toys are sentient beings that can think and conceive of their actions and act upon them. It is a moral imperative for Buzz Lightyear and for them to have the agency to act in the first place, and this agency is something that cannot be achieved insofar they continue existing within the confines of human homes and are subject to the whims of their human owners and lose their agency whenever a human is around them. The only way these toys for them to gain agency is that they deserve to be totally separated from the human realm, to live in locations separate from the human world and be free to choose their own path and exercise this free will. By this point, I've proven two things. The first is the absence of pursuing this end, Buzz Lightyear uniquely is unlikely to have inherent value in his life and therefore meaning that his entire life is therefore purposeless and unable to achieve his telos and self-actualize. But secondly, is that every second spent with your own comrades is one that's tainted with the feelings of no joy to the extent to which you know that other people are as fortunate, that other people, like your own people with your own blood and skin, are people who are currently being abused by the human masses and are currently suffering immense amounts to the extent to which you cannot simply not act and you must be able to fulfill that purpose and therefore save other individuals. All those reasons, I've never been prouder to propose.
I thank the Prime Minister for that very fine speech, now calling on the Leader of Opposition to put forward the op case. Hear, hear.
Hi, can I confirm that I'm audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. I'm going to do 3 things in this speech. First, I'm going to take down every single one of the substantives. 2, I'm going to clear up the framing that LO has that PM has gotten wrong. Third, I'm going to deliver my 2 substantives. Okay, so first thing they say is that toys are sad and have no community, so they have no inherent purpose, and like that's really horrible for some way. 2 responses to this. First, there are other toys in the same room, so despite what PM wants to claim that, oh yeah, this doesn't actually count as a legitimate community, we think it does, because that you're your friends, you have agency, like in a community in the same room. Like just look at Buzz and Woody, they do have agency, they're not sad and like dying or whatever. Second, pain isn't measured the same in comparison for like toys and like humans. So like think about old toys. If they're like old and rusty, do you think they're gonna like feel pain in the same way that humans do when they have lung cancer? Or when PM talks about toys being pulled apart, their biology is literally made for that. Like the joints and the gears in their body are literally made for them to be able to be like pulled apart. So presumably there's not gonna be pain and they're not gonna be like dying and being tortured all the time. Second thing that PM tells us is that people aren't actually gonna detect the secret operations of Buzz Lightyear or whatever. First thing to note here, toys don't just exist in children's rooms. So PM can't just say, oh, but people are going to tell you that, oh, it's just your child's imagination. Like my uncle has a whole room of Lego minifigures on his bed. And so like literally any collection, like for example, model airplanes can count as toys. It doesn't just have to be Buzz Lightyear models. So like, yeah, it's not just going to be about children. Second, humans are smart too. Like if 5 billion people around the world all find that the toys are gone suddenly overnight, something's going to be up and people are going to start investigating. And so like the mechanism that toys can't be detected when humans are in the same room as them doesn't actually work, because you can see how the toys have moved prior to that. You can use like other methods of like observation, like I don't know, CCTV cameras or like a mirror or whatever to observe them. So yeah, third thing they said is that there's no inherent purpose in life. I'm gonna take that down later, but first thing I'd like to note is that there's a difference in agency. So like humans need agency because we aren't born with a purpose, but toys are made with a purpose, that is to serve humans. I'm going to elaborate on that later, but yeah. Okay, I'm going to move on to my 2 arguments right now. First is on splintering. Premise of this argument is that these toys don't actually want to be liberated. So Woody and Buzz don't want to actually be discovered to be sentient because they think that their owner will treat them differently, because they actually want to appeal themselves to their owner. They want to make him happy. They don't want to just run off and start liberating like people on their own. Toys like Slinky Dog or like Mr. Potato Man believe that their purpose is to enhance the magic of childhood. So they actually want to do it. They want to like do their best in the role they've been given. POIs in chat, please. They want to do their best in the role they've given and like, I don't know, make the child's experience more magical. Like their primary purpose, as out of the factory, their primary purpose is to serve, entertain, and provide love. So even if they're sentient, their purpose is limited by the fact that they have a maker and the fact that they actually like the purpose that their purpose is limited by the fact that they have a maker and the fact that they actually agree to that purpose and consent to that purpose. So what's the implication of this? These toys, like Woody and Buzz, don't actually want to be liberated. So when PM tells you that they have no inherent purpose, we think they do. Their purpose is to serve humans and do what they love and do what they want to do. And so we think it's bad when you try and rip people away from what they want to do and like what their purpose is and just say, we're going to liberate you. Like, even though you want to be here, no, we think that's slavery. So yeah, get out. It's not slavery if you consent to it and if they are like made for it. So like, yeah. And sorry. Second point here. Second tier of this argument is that you're going to alienate many toys. So just like, let's say if the feminist movement pushed for anti-natalism, you're going to alienate a lot of women who have children, just as if Buzz Lightyear pushes for everyone to like revolt against the human masters, then those toys who have a good relation to their master and like actually want to be there are going to not subscribe to Buzz Lightyear's movement of like self-suffrage and like removal from oppression. So the attempt to liberate them against their wishes, we think on our side, is unjust. And so it doesn't accomplish the goals of Buzz Lightyear, which presumably would be to like maximize utility for toys. Yeah. Before I move on to my second substantive, any POIs?
POICG, did Sid's toys consent to being dismembered to the same extent that they were?
Sorry?
Did Sid's toys consent to be dismembered like they were in the movie.
I mean that's their purpose, right? They're fine with it, so we don't really care. We don't see the point. Yeah. Okay. Second substantive here is on crackdown. The framing here is that humans like are obsessed with finding other sentient life. Like we've devoted the past 100 years to the past 1,000 years of humanity to looking out at space. We make telescopes and we look at like Mars, we look at Venus, we look at Jupiter, and we see, hey, is there life on Europa? Hey, is there life on Titan? Humans are obsessed with finding other sentient life. So they're probably not gonna, like, the most likely outcome is they're not gonna coexist with like Buzz Lightyear and Woody or whatever. Like if they find out that toys are actually sentient, they're surely gonna like attack or crack down on these toys, or at least experiment on them. Like, I think this is purely logical. Like, if I find that the toy I have sitting on my bed and like my dresser is sentient, I'm obviously gonna like try and find out more, and I'm not gonna just like let him coexist with me. So yeah, there's a high risk of humans finding out. And even if you say that it's not gonna happen all the time, we don't think it's worth the trade-off for like all toys to be exterminated and sent back to the factories or whatever and dismantled. We think that's worse when people can't fulfill that purpose. So like it's gonna like very intuitively what Proposition is doing is trying to compromise this movement that Buzz Lightyear is doing. At most, we support a world where Buzz Lightyear only helps those who actually need help, like those people who are actually being oppressed and dismembered, like what CG wants to say, and help those people. But we don't think it's right to we don't think it's right to let other toys who want to live with their masters and live with their humans and let them get cracked down upon, because we think that's unjust and it compromises the will of such toys who actually want to live there. And like third point here on the risks of like on Buzz Lightyear, sure. I think Buzz Lightyear is treated very well in Toy Story. So all the evidence suggests that he probably doesn't have incentive to like go around and like start liberating toys randomly. So yeah. At the end of this speech, 3 things I've done. First, I've proven that we maximize toys' agency. That is, they want to serve humans and they want to enhance the magic of a child's childhood. Second, we maximize happiness for both toys and for children and for adults and whatever. Third, we prevent the oppression of toys, which is what Proposition so desperately wants.
I thank the Leader of Opposition for that very fine speech, now calling on the Deputy Prime Minister to extend the Gov case. Hear, hear. Once again, calling the Deputy Prime Minister to start their speech. Okay, perfect.
Okay. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, give me a moment, yeah. I will take PYs via voice. And I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Judge, I think that opposition's case is fundamentally really sad, because what they tell you is that these toys, they are created to serve humans, and therefore they want to serve humans. And we tell you that this is incredibly bad because of a couple of reasons, right? First of all, these toys didn't consent to being created. They were created without any questions asked to them. They were given this purpose without any questions asked to them. Let me draw a parallel for you, Judge. A slave was born on a plantation. Did the slave consent to be born? Did the slave consent to his continual use over many decades? Did the slave consent to having his purpose in life being to serve his master? And if, Judge, your answer is no, then I don't see any reason why it shouldn't be the same for toys. Because opposition's case relies on this premise that these toys, they are created to serve humans and they're going to be happy doing that. They're going to be happy being subjugated. They're going to be happy because Buzz Lightyear is happy to serve Andy, right? Now, Why is it that this is not the case? First of all, Buzz Lightyear is an incredibly privileged person. He
POI.
have a community, but most people, most people, see that equivalence? Most toys don't. Most toys may not have 20 toys in a toy box. Most toys might have 1 or 2 toys in the household. Some toys are being abused, like Sid, like the POI from CG. And we tell you that insofar as not every toy is in this great position of having a large community, a happy community, we think that there is a duty for you
Information.
to allow this to have an avenue for these toys to be free. Side opposition tells you that they maximize agency because you have these toys and they want to be used. We tell you that that's not true. We maximize agency because we give these toys a choice. These toys, whether they live under a good circumstance, if they have a nice child that plays with them, or if they have a terrible child or a terrible adult that uses them for parts, that
Point
abuses
of information.
we think that there is a duty to provide this choice. So their argumentation saying that we are forcing this choice to leave the situations that they're happy in, we think that this is plainly not true. Nobody was forced to use the Underground Railroad. It is these slaves that were abused that chose of their own agency, and in this exercise of agency for the first time of their lives, they chose to join the Underground Railroad. Nobody forced them to be there, and this is the conception that we have already told you in our first speaker.
Point of information.
Just swept away. We asked you, opposition. So if it's not true that what we told you, if what we told you in Prime Minister is not true, if it is not true that these toys will go on operations to other houses at night, they will hide in the sewers, they will gradually go on and liberate others' toys if they want.
Point, sir.
If this is not true, and then what is your counterfactual? Because the counterfactual that we have heard is that 5 billion toys will simultaneously all leave their houses. Now, a couple reasons why this is unlikely.
Point of information.
First of all, these toys have phones. These toys have Facebook. They can communicate worldwide. We think no. Number 2, we think that, again, not every toy will just start leaving. Number 3, we think that the process of allowing these toys to leave and providing them safe refuge is not something that's accomplished instantaneously. It's a gradual process. We've already told you in the
Point of information.
Fine, sure.
Thank you so much. Can you please explain why Buzz Lightyear is specifically such a great candidate to lead this
wow. You
organization?
didn't listen to PM. Let's go on. Okay, I'll address that now since you put that, okay? So other than the duty to have more agency, and we achieve more agency on our side because we give these toys a choice. Number 2, another reason why is that Buzz Lightyear, we told you, already has this sense of duty to liberate. We see in the movies that Buzz already is doing liberation. He goes to Sid's house and liberates the toys there from abuse. He is already doing this. The motion calls for him to establish an organization to do this more. If he was so satisfied by this liberation that he did once, what makes you think that he doesn't want to do it again? He may not have a duty to free every toy, and he doesn't, but he has a duty, number 1, to fulfill himself, to seek this actualization that he can uniquely get when he is a leader, when he serves a higher purpose. And number 2, we think there is a moral duty to give an option to these toys, and our side is the only side that achieves that. Now, next.
POI.
To extend, they say, to extend, even if toys are discovered, and even if humans find out that the toys are sentient, right? We think that the likely outcome is not these toys will all be sent to a factory to be tortured. We think, Judge, that that is an incredibly unlikely counterfactual. Why is this the case? Few reasons. First of all, these toys can communicate. We see them in the movie using crayons to write. They can communicate with humans. So
POI.
humans see these toys communicating to them. I think that they have demonstrated agency, right? Humans are not going to start looking at these beings with agency and thinking of them as things to be used. Just because they were created doesn't mean they don't deserve the rights, and doesn't mean people won't think that they deserve the rights
Information.
of animals. Fine, information.
Since presumably, like, these people, these toys can okay. I'll just reframe this in an
Don't waste my
understandable way.
Don't waste my time. Okay, so frankly, let me move on. why is it that humans are unlikely to view these things as things to be used, these toys as being things to be used? Because we already see this debate. Judge, let me draw another parallel. If you created a robot army, like in so many sci-fi films, if these robots gain sentience, what is the likely outcome? Is the likely outcome that we subjugate these robots and make them our slaves? The fact that there are debates ongoing right now with many people defending the right of artificial intelligence to have certain rights, to have certain ways in which to exercise the agency, proves that even if it is true that people think that these things are created, that they own these things, the moment at which these beings show that they have agency, it is likely that they will actually be treated with respect rather than be treated with a demeaning sense of superiority and be put under the yoke of slavery, as opposition tries to paint as a likely outcome. And because of that, and because our side is both moral and more realistic, we think that you should go for side proposition. Thank you very much.
I thank the Deputy Prime Minister for that very fine speech, now calling on the Deputy Leader of Opposition to close the opening exchange. Hear, hear.
Hi, can I check if I'm audible?
Yep.
Thank you. Okay. As a person who watched Toy Story as a child, there's several things that disappoint me in this debate. First, that's the motion, but that's like beside the question. Second, that's the government case that have been coming out of opening government. Why is this the case? Let me just put it to you in a very simple way. You know, opening government, DPM says, quote, don't waste my time. Unfortunately for him and his team have been wasting their time because they've been talking about an entire wrong issue. We've told you that in Daniel's speech. I'm going to tell you that again because, you know, listening is really important. So, crucial part of opening opposition's frames as follows. Number one, toys, if sentient, are fundamentally meant to be playthings. Number two, toys cannot be judged on the same moral metric as humans, no matter what they say. The simple reason for this being they are not humans. You cannot tell me that Buzz Lightyear is a human. He does not possess human anatomy. He does not possess a human brain. Even if you want to say he has human sentience, he is not a human. Number three, even if I are a worst case, they still lose. I'll explain this in like my second clash, but I'll just talk about that later. Some government creates a problem where if they want to liberate toys, it becomes counterintuitive. Daniel told you why this is the case. Number one, it is likely to face massive crackdown. Even if it's morally justified, we still think that the ends do not justify the means. Number two, the burden is on them to prove why toys would actively seek liberation provided their entire existence is based on providing fun and happiness to humans. Number three, they also need to prove why Buzz Lightyear specifically is like suitable for this role. They say in PM, oh, he's a strong leader, he's good, whatever. Throwing random adjectives is not going to cut it. I'm very sorry to tell you that. You need to tell me why specifically in the role of Buzz Lightyear inside of Toy Story, why he specifically is so suitable for this role. You can't just throw random adjectives like he's a great leader and just try to cut it. I'm sorry, that's not going to work. I'm going to talk about a few things. First, I'm going to touch briefly on why government's case falls in two ways. First, I'm going to talk about morality. Second, I'm going to talk about Buzz Lightyear specifically because, you know, this debate is kind of centered around him. But one thing to note before, like I've said before, like Daniel has told you, toys are not humans. 4 words, toys are not humans. Moral standards do not apply, and humans are not designed with purpose. They talk about agency. We think that agency does not apply insofar as you're born with a purpose. What this means is that humans are not designed with purpose. So when I was born, I was not born with a designated purpose. When African slaves were born, they were not born with a designated purpose. Unlike toys, we have free will. This is the reason why we have free will, because we're not conformed to anything by birth. This is why I'm able to choose what words I'm saying right now and not to be a plaything inside of someone's house, because I was not fundamentally made to be such a thing. Unlike toys, toys are manufactured for the sole purpose of human satisfaction. We don't see anything wrong with that because of the specific form of like manufacturing. If they really want to talk about how this is unjust, they might as well just cut off all supply of toys because somehow we are, you know, oppressing the toys by playing with them, blah, blah, blah. I think that's utterly ridiculous. It's a slippery slope that they had to defend, but they can't defend. They have not defended it. Ridiculous. Two things. Number one, on morality. Two things under morality. Number one, emotivism. What this means is that humans apply a moral standard for themselves insofar as they see it fit. What this means is also that, say, the reason why we crucified homosexuals back in the day was because we didn't see it fit. Now we don't do that anymore because we do see it fit. So whatever human human moral standards they want to apply also applies to toys in the sense that if we see it fit to play with toys and not give them agency, so be it, because that's human morality. If they want to claim that they're the more moral side, we don't think that's the case. But second thing, we already told you why toys do not fundamentally deserve agency. Although it sounds very weird, they're going to use emotional rhetoric. Judge, I'm going to tell you, they are definitely going to push out all the emotional rhetoric, talk about slavery, blah, blah, blah. I would encourage you to actually take a look from another standpoint. Look at these toys not as people. These toys are a means to an end. They are not people. They are like objects. They are, you shouldn't objectify people, but the toys are not people. I don't know how much I can say this as like, I don't know, bizarre as it seems, it actually is the case. If you think about it, simplify everything. They're not people, they're toys. This is why fundamentally they can't prove that these toys deserve agency because their entire case relies on some like weird assumption that these toys are somehow human, that these toys are going to like, oh no, hate themselves, feel pain. Daniel told you why they can't feel pain. They don't seem to respond to that, whatever. Second thing I'm going to talk about is sentience. So like from the entire OG case, I can already tell that they have not watched Toy Story before. The reason for this being, literally in the info slide, they said, like, I don't know, the toys are only sentient when the humans are not present. What this means is that the selective sentience, the implication of this is twofold. Number one, selective sentience means that their full sentience cannot be classified as human. The result of this is that they cannot be accorded human rights based on their own sentience because they aren't even fully sentient. If a human is in the room, they stop being sentient. This is why full sentience is not accorded. Number two, they like during this period where like they are actually sentient, they are within a community, they're within a social circle. What opening government tries to paint a picture of Buzz Lightyear is like a miserable toy being abused. That is not the case. Andy loves Buzz Lightyear. Andy loves his toys. Andy plays with them. This is not the case which they try to paint. They have not watched the thing. Like it's very, very sad to see that they're debating a motion which they didn't even bother doing a research on. But let me just tell you this. During this period where humans aren't there, they do not possess sentience, they do not possess agency. What this means is that they themselves as a whole cannot be accorded the full rights of sentience and agency. This is why the morals don't stand. They can't just say, oh, but morally good. That's not an explanation. I would not accept that. I would encourage the judges not to accept it as well. Number two, I'm going to talk about the more specific circumstances of Buzz Lightyear. So what does this mean? Number one, they say that he's very empathetic. He's like a global, like a social justice warrior for toys. He loves the other comrades, blah, blah, blah. I'm sorry to break a bubble. That's not the case. Your Buzz Lightyear is not your Mahatma Gandhi. He's not your Nelson Mandela. I'm very, very sorry to tell you that. They clearly didn't watch the movie because Buzz, he ended up being quite sad. But the reason why he ended up being sad was because Andy grew up and stopped playing with him because he became more and more busy. So what we can infer from this, using your primary school inference skills, is that in fact toys do like human attention. They do want human attention, and if they don't get the human attention, guess what? They get sad. Especially for Buzz Lightyear, this is already proven inside of the film. They do not respond to this. They have not watched the film. It's quite miserable. Blah blah blah. Number two, they've clearly not played with toys in a long time because they clearly mischaracterize how people treat toys. They think that people treat toys like they treat slaves. That we abuse toys. We abuse toys with the sadistic purpose of destroying them. That is not the case. For anyone who remembers playing their childhood toy, even if it's broken, even if it's like very old, that's not the case. So I don't know. But for me personally, I used to own like a Mickey Mouse doll. I really like that doll. But even though it's old, it's like wear and tear, this doesn't mean that I actively want to abuse it. So this is where the second part of the important moral judgment comes in. It's that we don't hurt it with our intention. In the vast majority of cases, humans do not inflict harm on toys, and toys do not suffer wear and tear because humans actively want to damage it. So I don't tear apart my Mickey Mouse toy because I'm a sadistic prick who just wants to kill people or something. That is not the case. Please pardon my French. And number two, you don't abuse toys just because you hate them. Like again, wear and tear. They aren't aware of the fact that Buzz Lightyear loves Andy and that he is willing to do anything for Andy. I'm just gonna end off with two quotes. Number one from Andy, you're not just a toy, Buzz, you're a special toy. And number two from Buzz, it's not whether about Andy plays with us, it's about being there when he needs us. This shows why that case falls. We're very, very proud to stand on side opposition.
I thank the Deputy Leader of Opposition for that very fine speech. Now calling on the Member of Government to start the closing exchange. Hear.
Hi, really quick. I'll just have a few seconds to set up my timer and turn on my camera. I'll take POIs to voice, preferably at the 3rd to 5th minute. Starting my speech. Wait, give me a sec. My speech in 3, 2, and 1. I obey my parents because they put a roof on my head, keep me fed, and send me to school. Dogs obey their masters because their masters give them a home, take care of them, and give them food. Understand that the crucial burden push that the entire opening half misses out on is the fact that the relationship of toys and humans occurs on a social contract. And like all other social contracts, this can fracture and this can break. The moment in time that Sid abuses his toys, breaks their limbs apart, and uses them for his freaky experiments is the moment in time they were justified in leaving him and escaping his clutches. But the moment in time people show love to their toys, like Andy, is the more moment in time that they don't feel the need to leave in the first place. Two delineations that will win CG the debate. First, we discuss why it must be Buzz Lightyear specifically, outside of a sense to duty, because all toys have that sense of duty anyways, because that's just the way they're manufactured. And second, we prove why toys are much more likely to buy in, especially and most especially in the case that it's Buzz. Two refutations first before quickly going on to my arguments. First, they tell us that the community's toys are already sufficient. I'm just going to respond to all and to all in general. Because first, we tell you this is not true. Because what this does is that it perpetuates an echo chamber where all toys become okay with being abused, where they internalize their oppression and reduce themselves to all that they are. I'm going to talk about why this is harmful in the long term, especially because this relationship isn't one that's going to last into adulthood. Children grow up at the end of the day. And I think it becomes far better on our side of the house, and I'll prove it later, for toys to be able to cope with the absence of this validation when they don't have it tied intrinsically to the person, but rather who you are as a person instead of who you're owned by. But second, I don't think this is not true as well, because all toys have a lot of companions. They don't feel lonely at the end of the day. But even if this doesn't succeed, and especially in the case if it doesn't succeed, at the very least, you have a community to fall back on. You have this network. Look at how Andy's toys did not know what Sid was doing to his toys, even in the case that Sid was just next door. I think that when these abuses happen, and especially when they happen, these toys have a better connection of network, especially when they have this, and only when they have this. But second, on the point that they alienate toys that don't want to be liberated, I don't get why this is necessarily a harm, because it only exists as an option. Toys have some extent of agency as to whether or not they want to opt into being liberated in the first place. So obviously, if you're happy, you wouldn't want to leave. If you don't want to be liberated, it is very likely that Buzz is still going to understand, because Buzz himself doesn't want to be liberated. He loves Andy. He just cares about ugly toys. That's why he wants to liberate you in the first place. Other than liberation, there's a sense of community that you can have in this organization. 2 points of framing really quick before moving on to my arguments. What does this secret organization likely look like? I don't think it's just going to look like an entire Marxist revolution, but rather it's going to resemble a lot of the underground anarchists that we see today. They would only seek out violence in the worst extents, and this would generally look very similar to what Woody did to Sid's toys when they were being abused. But second, this is not necessarily equating to revealing their actions to the world, but I'm later going to prove in my argumentation that even in the case that happens, why it's still a good thing and why we're still able to claim the benefit. 3 pieces of argumentation here today. First, why the protections and rights are intrinsically tied to sentience are applicable even to toys. Second, how the counterfactual perpetuates an echo chamber where toys internalize their oppression and develop dependency in the long term, which makes it hard, which develops the situations like the dependency that Woody had on Andy. That's why he was really sad when Andy grew up. But thirdly, why the presence of revolutionary figures like Buzz Lightyear ensures the longevity of liberation movements in the long term. First, on the whole point on how protections and rights are intrinsically tied to sentience, I think this point in and of itself already responds to the majority of the opening clash, which is why we win even on their premise. First, I want the delta of this argument is basically in the sense that rights are attributed based on the basis of sentience. I think that 1, birth lottery and the absence of agency and autonomy and consent means that you are born and built as a toy without any agency, without any consent. This ultimately directly responds to the point we get to OO, that these principles only apply to humans, because I would argue that even if that if that were truly true, we would not slaughter livestock in ways that minimize pain. We would make it socially acceptable to kill all animals in that sense then. But even if on their side, we think that these rights are directly attributable just based on the basis that individuals have sentience, and this is applicable to toys also, and therefore they should have be allowed to have some degree of agency. But why are toys willing to buy in and seek liberation in the first place? This fulfills the burden push that comes in too late from OO. I think it's just because a lot of the actions that are done to these toys are done absent of their consent. I don't think they're going to be happy with the way that they're oppressed simply because you're literally being taken apart like what Sid did to his toys. And generally, if you are happy with what's being done to you, you won't need to opt into the liberation in the first place. So I don't get that whole point on them then. But third, it's on the fact that the relationship of the toys and humans occurs on a social contract. So they're therefore justified in actually choosing and opting into the liberation that Buzz provides, insofar as they're unsatisfied and insofar as they're upset in ways that cannot be reconciled through other processes and other alternatives. This leads me to my second point on how in their paradigm, the counterfactual perpetuates an echo chamber where toys internalize their oppression. Because a lot of the times, if they're sentient to believe that they're being persecuted, they're being oppressed, then they have enough incentive to opt out in the first place. But in the vast majority of cases that they don't, surprise, this relationship doesn't actually last forever. So even if they grow accustomed to their suffering, this is only one way. Insofar as the other party is still there, the other party still plays with them. But guess what happened in the Toy Story movie? Andy grew up, Andy went to college, Andy had to go pursue a degree in whatever. I think that the moment in time that these children grow up and they stop playing with their toys is the moment in time you feel less fulfilled as a toy. And Buzz knows that. He knows, he saw what happened to Woody when Andy grew up. He saw that dependency that Woody developed, that the moment in time it was taken away, you feel less validated as a toy because, surprise, that's the side effect of sentience. But third, why the presence of revolutionary figureheads like Buzz Lightyear ensures the longevity of liberation movements? I think this case is inherently debate winning insofar as we're able to prove that even in the worst case where this liberation does not succeed, why the longevity of ideas, which is only exclusive to when you have Buzz Lightyear as a figurehead, is the unique benefit we can access then. 2 points of framing up with this argument in particular. I think that one, for revolutions to happen in the first place, large amounts of toys will have to be unsatisfied to want to opt in the first place. Because I don't think this is an entirely new prospect of dissatisfaction, because toys have likely been feeling this for generations, simply because the presence of sentience implicates some desire for agency, which will be present in the future, which means that this revolution can only exist with Buzz Lightyear as the figurehead. Look at how in the Hunger Games, even if oppression existed in Panem for generations, overhaul could only be actualized when they had Katniss Everdeen to rally behind, when they had a phase for the revolution that was applicable and that basically a lot of the population agreed was good. I think that Buzz Lightyear then serves uniquely as a symbol of unity in these circumstances. I think it's uniquely Buzz Lightyear, not just for the reasons that OG provides us, which is basically on the basis of like, oh, he's charismatic and stuff like that, but just generally in the way that he's able to connect with his fellow toys, because he is a toy himself and he can be a symbol of legitimacy and credibility. It's less about his individual capacities, but also more about his ability to serve as a leader and his capacity to do that. Because even in the worst case that this liberation fails, even if they discover it, even if Buzz Lightyear somehow becomes martyred in the absolutely worst case, I think that at the very least on our side, the longevity and the ideas and the fact that you can actually put a face on the movement that Buzz Lightyear had, the liberation that you had, it's probably going to be reminiscent to communist China under Mao, which is in the case that it actually works, but in the case that it doesn't work, they have Buzz Lightyear to look retrospectively on. These ideas permeate more for generations in the future. A man can die, a toy can break, but their ideas will stay alive. Side with CG.
I thank the member of government for that very fine speech. Now calling on the member of opposition. Hear, hear.
Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
All right. Amongst the extremely antagonistic opening exchange between OG and OO, they've completely ignored that this has been an actor motion and that fundamentally they have to prove why Buzz, among the hundreds of clones of other Buzz Lightyears, should be the one to do this. In fact, we've seen in the movie that he has so much to lose, and even side closing government even concedes that Buzz actually likes Sandy. So far, there's no motivation for Buzz himself to sacrifice everything that he has worked for and everything that is normal to him or comfortable to him to choose a Marxist revolution that might not even work, right? This is extremely unreasonable to actually happen, and this is why you should actually side with us. Let's talk about why Buzz Lightyear actually has no real incentive to start this kind of revolution, which side opening opposition didn't have any sort of meaningful analysis. OO has repeatedly just stated that toys are made to have a purpose and they are created in a factory by humans. This isn't sufficient analysis. This actually, we provide a more in-depth analysis by showing that toys actually have no evolutionary benefit to agency, right? Since they were since they also have no need. For example, humans have an innate desire to be free because in the past they needed to be free to, for example, gain territory, to scourge for food, to get mates, and to survive in general. Which is why humans feel claustrophobic when they're stuck in a cave, because they know that they will die very soon. This is the kind of torture that you're subjecting another human to when you're putting them in a cage, and which is why humans think slavery is bad. But why this doesn't apply to toys? Because they don't have the need to reproduce. They don't have any sort of innate desire to be free, and in fact they are more likely to be connected to they are more likely to have more empathy towards their owner, which in this case is Andy. So because they are more likely to have because Buzz is more likely to need that kind of sustenance for his own survival, right? In this case, to survive means to have a really good relationship, and in fact we've seen in the movie how Buzz is repeatedly seen as like a chosen one, or like the favorite toy of Andy, right? And this is why Buzz Lightyear personally has such an extreme connection towards his owner, and that he isn't willing to sacrifice this. And even if on their side, where he is willing to sacrifice, and in fact the global revolution has changed the world, and now that toys are all free and somehow have a utopia, he'll still have some sort of cognitive dissonance. If we assume that they're also sentient creatures, they're also very likely to ruminate over the things that they have done, right? And in this case, Buzz Lightyear has grown up in an environment which comfortable to him, and he completely flipped his world upside down. We've seen in how a lot of people, they feel lost and purposeless when they're displaced or they are even immigrants to another country, which are completely unfamiliar to them, right? So if in this case, when people in real life already crave for things like religion to tell them that God created them, why would a being which has already been created would have this need for purpose, right? So secondly, we'd like to talk about how there's actually a social aspect that prevents Buzz from having an actual internal motivation, right? We've already seen how in the movie itself, the other toys are also already very indoctrinated in, like, for example, supporting Andy, right? Or living in an environment. So again, they already have no concept of freedom because they have no exposure to them. They can only interact with the people within their own social structure. And of course, the first toy that Andy gets would probably love Andy. And as a result, the other toys who interact with that toy would have this sort of wave effect, right? Where it propagates, and it's similar to how a religion starts in real life, where one person spreads the message and eventually it becomes a whole group of following, right? Basically, Andy is also now in a cult of his own, and he has absolutely no idea how the outside world looks like. So again, there's no sort of motivation for Andy to even feel some sort of empathy for any other hundreds of millions of other toys around the world which are quote unquote being oppressed, when he has absolutely no idea what oppression looks like, since he's very happy on his own. The difference that humans has this kind of moral value is because they've developed this sort of feeling and this empathy over hundreds of years of oppression, right? And in fact, if it took 100 years for humans to have overcome this sort of slavery and feudalism, how would their side in fact achieve this? Although this is more of a practical harm, right? So because since from the start, Andy has already been indoctrinated. Buzz has already been indoctrinated from the start, and also has also like kind of theological kind of relationship towards Andy. It's very unlikely that he is willing to retaliate. Something side opening opposition didn't do. Now let's ask the question why Buzz specifically himself should be the one suitable to starting the revolution, which is something CG tried to claim by saying that Buzz is one of the toys himself. But they also failed to realize that there's literally a factory intended to make a lot of Buzz Lightyears, right? And each Buzz Lightyear is also indoctrinated with the same values that OG was trying to say about how he's meant to save the world, right? And how he's meant to save every other not meant to save every other toy. It's meant to be the sort of leader, right? And that he has a very charismatic value. But this is also what every other Buzz Lightyear does. So again, they haven't met their burden of proof. What's more likely to happen is that Buzz Lightyear would think that there is some sort of inaction, right? Or is it a bystander effect, where he would think that every other, even if we take their premise that he has a motivation, there will be a more likely to have a bystander effect, where he sees the other Buzz Lightyears and says that, okay, they are more suitable to this, right? I'm not the person to be there, because he's already currently happy. We already see this, how the rich in the current world itself aren't willing to donate because they think, or willing to help the world issues, because they don't think that they are in some sort of positions of power to do it. Like the middle class or upper middle class who are slightly more wealthy, they aren't willing to donate their money. Why? Because they think that some other rich billionaire like Bill Gates will try and solve the problem, right? So again, there's no motivation for revolution. So what the counterfactual on Side's government side is quite similar to basically doing a Unabomber and leaving civilization, right? Throwing away every single thing, single social support structure that is doing to him, that is supporting him. And what he is doing is basically pulling people that which can be parallel to a nomadic tribe who have actually no understanding of these kind of this high level social science concepts about liberation and agency, and pulling them out of their comfort, pulling them out of places of their own comfort and throwing them into a completely unfamiliar world, which is very unlikely for Buzz, who is also a very altruistic person as seen from the movies, to do this. Even if on their side that they're able to achieve this, it's more likely that Buzz Lightyear is very miserable. For example, in the movie, we can see that after that, even if Andy grew up, right, where Buzz still got donated away and you're still able to find meaning in being the toys of another person, but Spork in the movie was living outside on his own, completely alone, without any human to support, right, and it was completely miserable in the movie. So fundamentally, we've already shown that there are many systematic reasons within the Toy Story universe itself that actually proves that Buzz Lightyear is in no position and has no motivation to start this revolution. Hence, he should not do it. Side with us.
I thank the member of opposition for that very fine speech. Now calling on the government whip to end the government case. Hear, hear.
Hi, just give me a moment to organize my notes. Thank you. Can I confirm if I'm audible and visible?
Yes to both.
Okay. POIs through chat. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Opposition's case is not going to infinity and beyond simply on the metrics by which they evaluate how sentient beings evaluate agency. Even if to some extent that you are socialized into believing that freedom is good and right by these toys, then I think that we still win because we're able to prove why otherwise. A couple points of rebuttals before my weighing. First, I want to discuss this whole point coming from CO on whether or not Buzz has an actual incentive to do this. I think that just because a toy has a good relationship with their owner, it doesn't mean that they can't evaluate whether or not another toy has a good relationship with their owner. We see this in the way Buzz understood immediately the situation in which Sid's toys were embedded into. We see this as well in the way that Buzz was able to relate with toys like Lotso and the other toys in the orphanage as well. This is simply because he's able to witness the horrors that these toys experience. He's able to relate to them as a toy himself and as an individual who wants the same thing that they want, which is community, which is love, and which is the companionship of their owners as well. With that, I think that because Buzz himself has an incentive for leadership and Buzz himself is able to relate to these toys, as Sofia says, then he has even more of an incentive to actually be able to liberate these individuals. But outside of this, listen to what Sofia says on why Buzz is the best character to do this. She tells you specifically that he has the leadership quality. It's because not only because of the way he's made, but because of how other toys are able to relate to him as well. But at the same time, because CO discusses like a factory full of Buzzes being a problem, I don't necessarily think this is a problem as well, because insofar as mass production of Buzz Lightyears exists, then we think that there's even more of a capacity for this revolution or the secret organization to actually be successful, because now there are more like-minded toys that would likely aid in the success of this organization at the very end of the day. So I think that for all those reasons, Buzz is the best character to do this. But then secondly, they discuss on why specifically these toys have no concept of freedom and they have no concept of wanting to seek out a better life. I don't think that this is true, because we see the way Buzz, we see the way Woody literally left Bonnie and joined Sporky in like a quest of his own, and we see those in the way that like Jesse had to decide, but Woody also had to decide which owner to stay with, because they generally want to seek out a quality of life themselves, because they're sentient in the sense that they still want to have a good life, not only to be free of abuse and not only to be free free of like extremities, but also because they generally just want to seek out things that are fulfilling to them. And I think that's specifically an exclusive contribution that comes solely from our side then, right? But what happens without them? What happens specifically without like this secret organization then? I think that we uniquely bring this in at Sofia when she tells you that not only is abuse and slavery just going to be rampant, but then she tells you specifically that internalized beliefs perpetuate within the minds of these toys as well. We think we're able to expound this debate when she starts to discuss why specifically this is so important, whether or not it fails in the relevance of figureheads and social movements then. So I think from contribution alone, we're able to win this debate. Two key issues in this debate then. First, on do toys actually want this? But then secondly, on their capacity for this to be, the capacity for this secret organization to actually be executed well. So first on toys with like actually wanting this then. We think that this is the largest issue because opposition says that they don't consent whatsoever, but government says that they're desperate. If we're able to win this issue, notice, Chair, that we're first able to likely prove its success or likely to widen the margin of its success then, because we're able to discuss why specifically toys are much more likely to help each other and much more likely to engage in community behaviors that would protect the organization as a whole. What do we say? We tell you two things. First, we say that yes, toys actually want this. Sofia discusses things like the birth lottery and the social contract, right? And why specifically if they have dissatisfaction and why specifically if the social contract is broken, they have the right to enact these things, then they have the right to enact justice by their own metrics as well then, right? We tell you as well why specifically, how specifically this manifests within toys. When we discuss things like Lotso's dissatisfaction and how quickly Sid's toys left when they were given an out. But then second, we say that even if toys don't want this, we specifically say that first, at least they have a community, because not only is a secret organization built to liberate toys, but they're also built to build companionship with other toys as well. We tell you specifically the importance of having an interconnected world for these toys as well. But then secondly, we tell you exclusively here at CG why the importance of a figurehead is so relevant in this debate, why specifically this would instigate standards by which other toys would measure their own abuse. We think we take it over our opening on this clash, because our opening only operates on the abuse that toys experience as a metric whether or not they deserve to be free then. But then we expand when we tell you things like the birth lottery and social contract as well. But then secondly, we're also able to discuss more extensively why this is good even in the instance that it fails. Even in the instance that it fails then. What does opposition say? First, they say that toys don't want to because they're attached, right? But then we specifically say that this isn't necessarily true, because in the instance that the relationship is violated, then attachment quickly becomes bitter and toxic, as seen with Lotso as well. But if this argument were true, then all toys likely would have been satisfied no matter what was being done with them. They likely would have seen it as a purpose being fulfilled rather than a grave violation then, which it simply just doesn't happen, as seen by the multiple examples that we've given you. But then secondly, we tell you that they have no capacity to want to be free. I already tackled this in my rebuttals. I think we win already. But then second, on the capacity for this to be done well as well, right? We think that if we win this, we win the debate entirely because we're able to claim the safety of toys outside of the liberation, right? We tell you specifically that outside of OG's discussion of the element of surprise, we discuss things like stealth and how toys would likely work together. But then even if it isn't done well, we tell you again like the importance of figureheads, right? And we tell you the importance of figureheads as well, right? We win this specifically because we discuss the nature of toys in this discussion as well. But then we specifically talk about why Buzz would have the capacity to do this. What does opposition say? Really quickly, they say that, they're gonna be caught and you're gonna be abused to much worse extents then. First, realize that this is unlikely. Toys are very aware of their situations and their living spaces. Likely they're able to circumnavigate individuals, CCTV cameras and things like that, especially because of their size. But then secondly, even if they are caught, the natural instinctive reaction of people is probably to blame it on supernatural reactions, or probably not to immediately think that this toy is alive. But then in the worst case, if they do tell other people, I don't think that most people would buy into belief that like toys are alive anyway. So I don't necessarily believe this harm. But in a very worst case, I don't think the repercussions of being caught are to the same extent as opposition says it is. It's like that all these toys are going to be tortured and things like that, right? Because they still have an incentive to self-preserve, seeing as they're still at the mercy of manufacturing, as they're in the mercy of manufacturing then. So for all these reasons and more, I think that this is a clear CG win. Thank you.
I thank the government whip for that very fine speech, now calling on the opposition whip to finally end this grand final. Hear, hear.
Hi, can I check I'm visible and audible?
Yes to both.
Wow. Contrary to government's belief, the toys do not live under a system of dictatorship known as no alternatives. Yes, throughout this entire debate, we've been paralleling this to a global Marxist revolution. But what every team in today's debate has failed to realize is that it is not like the global Marxist motion. It is different in that this motion is an actor motion. We are talking about the actor of Buzz Lightyear specifically. This motion says this house believes that Buzz Lightyear should do something, and therefore the most important actor that we must care for the most is the specific Buzz Lightyear that appears in Toy Story. We gave you analysis from Member to tell you that there are many different Buzz Lightyears, all indoctrinated with the same belief, all with the same leadership qualities, all able to connect because they're all toys, all having the same qualities of being able to talk to each other, being able to communicate and set up this secret organization. At the end of today's debate, as OpWhip, I have to tell you that the framing that is most important is that this Buzz Lightyear we must recognize that this Buzz Lightyear has a lot to lose and that he shouldn't be the one to start the secret organization. We've also shown you why the secret organization is likely to lead to a loss of purpose of Buzz Lightyear, analysis that was completely left untouched by GovWhip. Let's deal with what CG has said about our case before moving into the different teams. CG said, he's able to relate. He has an incentive to do things like lead because he sees other people being tortured, because he has leadership qualities. And in fact, they talk about having more like-minded toys. We never truly contested the success, the likelihood of success of this secret organization. But rather what they fail to realize is that because they concede that there are a million different other buzzes being mass-produced, what they do concede is that this buzz specifically, in fact, they agree that like this buzz loves Andy. What they do concede is that this specific Buzz Lightyear that appears in Toy Story throughout the 4 seasons should not be the one starting the organization. It instead should be one of the many other Buzz Lightyears to start this revolution. Regarding what CG has said, CG started out their speech by talking about the social contract. They said how you have a social contract to your parents because your parents treat you well, and therefore you should treat them well back as well. I'm going to flip this because as soon as they do concede that Andy is equally as loving of Woody, equally as loving as Buzz, they concede that Buzz should not be leaving Andy. Can you imagine Andy's disappointment and shock as soon as Buzz leaves his house along with all the other toys and goes to try to liberate them? Andy himself would feel really sad. This is a gigantic betrayal to Andy, and I think Woody, by their own logic of the social contract, Buzz, by the logic of their own social contract, should not be leaving him. In fact, it is the other buzzers or the other different toys should be the one fulfilling this social contract of trying to leave. Regarding their point on dependency and how like these toys are dependent, and as soon as children grow up, they're going to lose purpose. We think that firstly, this is not necessarily true. I mean, even in the movie, like you see how they like get donated to other houses, and we already made the comparison in Member as to how like the toys that were outside or in the orphanage were a lot sadder than the toys which actually were given humans. We don't think that that is a true argument. And in fact, if it is so that they are dependent and the children has grown up, we think it's great that their life purpose has been fulfilled. I really do not get this argument. They talk about how uniquely Buzz should be the one because he's a symbol head and a connection. But what they fail to realize is that there's literally a million other buzzers who can also be figureheads. I fail to see the unique experiences of Buzz Lightyear, that this specific Buzz Lightyear, that makes him uniquely able to achieve this. Let's deal with what OG and what OG has said. Then, since OG and CG have very similar impacts in that they require the liberation to actually be successful, and that they rely mainly on the actors of other toys. Fine, let's engage with this. What they have to look at, what analysis they have to rely on is the fact that it's going to be successful. In the process of achieving success, no matter what OG tries to say, you still need to do a bunch of things. For example, you still need to do things like convince other toys that they should be liberated, because even if you're being tortured by even if you were being tortured by Sid, it's quite unclear to see why you wouldn't think that it's normal, and you wouldn't think, and even if you're upset, you wouldn't think of even liberating yourself in the first place because you've never been exposed to the concept of freedom. But also that you need to like do things like break them out of the window. You need to like wait for the human to be gone. So I think it's quite unclear as to why this will be so successful. As soon as a human notices that the toys become sentient, the human is likely to go in the rage of panic. I really don't get how they're going to achieve this successfully. I'll take one from opening.
Yeah, so the info site already says that toys have the ability to feel emotions, pain and suffering. Buzz has the ability to feel empathy. We have already proven that you cannot possibly be satisfied or happy in your own community to the extent to which your comrades are suffering.
Okay, yes, let's talk about this because I was really shocked when they said this. They said that when he went to Sid's house, he managed to liberate the toys in Sid. But if you look at the movie, it's like, wasn't it like absolutely a terrible thing that Buzz Lightyear knew about Sid? The very fact that Buzz Lightyear was exposed to the torture that everyone else was facing is a terrible thing because this is an actor motion. What's most important is Buzz's own mental health, if that exists. In which case, yeah, Buzz experienced a great amount of sadness, guilt. We agree with OG that it's a terrible thing for Buzz to know about all of these things. We'd rather he stay in his own bubble where he doesn't know about any of this culture because he is the most important actor in today's debate. And in fact, if Sid's house, if the toys in Sid's house were really going through so much torture, we are quite unclear as to why other Buzzers can't be there to save him from Sid's house. What else did OG say? OG told us that, oh, you need liberation because these toys need liberation because they're being tortured. I mean that key piece of framing already takes away most of that point, but we've also told you from member why there is going to be a lack of understanding of agency and freedom. And notice that this understanding of evolutionary purposes as well as the social indoctrination by like how you have a theological understanding is valid in our case in that all toys don't really feel that much of a connection to other toys and they don't exactly feel a duty to other toys. So I'm quite unclear as to why they say on principle grounds or even that we need to save the other toys. I'm quite unsure about that. Let's deal with why we beat OO then. OO talked about two things. They first talked about how toys don't want to be liberated, and then they secondly told us about human crackdown. I just want to know how unlikely this is, in that we agree that humans are likely to have a very negative reaction if they find out, but I think that that Gov Bench does have a point that throughout the entire 4 seasons, they never really got caught, so it's quite unclear as to why this will be very likely, and even if it's likely, I don't see why it will happen to a global extent. It could be an impact, but we think our impacts are a lot more sophisticated and a lot more certain because this is actor motion, and what we are most certain about is Buzz's own characterization, right? So we know that Buzz is an ambitious toy. Buzz is an ambitious toy. Buzz is a toy that wants to serve his owner the most, and we know that because as soon as he was brought in, he in fact took over Woody and as the favorite toy, and he experienced the most amount of happiness. You saw how sad he was as soon as he was competing with Woody to be the favorite toy. At the end of today's debate, yes, we want to go to infinity and beyond, but to shield Buzz from all the torture of the infinity and beyond, we have to oppose.
I thank the opposition whip for that very fine speech. This marks the end of the final. Kindly asking my panelists to join the breakout room. You guys will find out the results during the closing ceremony. Congrats, everyone.